So with the recent news on production starting on the remakes of Max Payne and Max Payne 2, I thought I would check out the most recent entry in the series, Max Payne 3. With it being a Rockstar game and releasing in 2012, the graphics and gameplay actually hold up quite well, and of course I'll go into that more later, and I'm so glad the first two games are getting remakes to then be as good but maybe even better than 3, as one of the biggest aspects that let those games down a bit are how outdated they actually are in terms of the look of the game, whereas with 3 being the most recent it does hold that advantage, though of course 2012 is still over a decade ago, which surprises me with how good the game looks. Then again, that's with most Rockstar games, and because it's been that long, I thought it would be the right time to give an updated review on this game to see if it's still worth checking out in 2023, 11 years later. Let's start off with the gameplay, and more specifically the gunplay, which is a key and very unique aspect of this game that I first noticed when wanting to check it out. Just shooting one person standing in front of you somehow looks so stylish and smooth, as there's a bunch of ways to go about taking people down, whether you want to take down multiple enemies in a quick succession by jumping in the air in any direction to activate the bullet time to enter slow motion, which makes all the kills look so unique each time, by launching over objects or from high up places to obviously have a lot more time until you come out of slow-mo when you touch the ground, and with the last enemy left, once you kill them the camera follows the bullet, which you can slow down or speed up by yourself to get a cool cinematic shot, which is such a fun way to finalize the fight. And of course there is a lot of shooting in this game, pretty much every single mission. With so many enemies to take down, it's key to have gameplay that is entertaining and varied as possible, and as you can see it definitely is. The animations and movement is so stylish every time, and this is all given to you freely to use right away at the start. It doesn't slowly make you progress to get it or do a tutorial, so as you get to grips with the mechanics you can start to experiment, even in terms of the variety of weapons to implement with it. The standard pistol, which probably looks the coolest and so clean, as well as it just fitting with the Max Payne character, but then you can use the revolver, micro and standard SMGs, the assault rifle, shotgun, sniper, etc. I'd say the smaller and one-handed guns are the best to use, or at least were my favourite, mainly the pistol or micro SMG, and you can dual wield both of these weapons as they're both one-handed, which is perfect. Adding on to the weapon selection, there's also golden guns that you can find across the areas or parts to build them up, which are a lot stronger with more damage and ammo to them. Now I know I said you can experiment with using the shooting mechanic and the weapon selection, but what you actually come up against could be seen as repetitive, though I'd still say the gameplay mechanic still doesn't get old, even after having the same or very similar enemy waves come at you. It does start to change a bit in terms of enemy types, though it might still be the same wave format. Some enemies may take longer to take down and have more armor. Not anything crazy or a giant list. Then again, the game is only around 10 hours long, so that's another reason why you wouldn't really get bored. If it was longer, there needs to be a progressive system to unlock more features in combat, for example, or just gameplay overall, whether that be a skill tree or trader's shop spread out through the locations to implement more variety in those later fights. As I said, without it, I still found it very fun and unique in each fight because of that freedom in those shooting mechanics. I do feel like that's what Rockstar tried to highlight the most in this game, and if they started adding a ton of unlocks to switch up the combat, then it would have strayed away from the main purpose, because no other Rockstar game has this sort of gunplay, and not even just Rockstar, just any game. Yes, there's the ability to slow down time for a few seconds in Deadeye in Red Dead 2, but that's really the closest we've gotten to it, and it's still very different. Max Payne really is so different, and I love that. Although it's old, it's still some of the best gunplay I've seen in terms of how cinematic and stylish you can make it look. Now I'd like to focus on the story of Max Payne 3 without any spoilers, which funny enough follows the main protagonist of Max Payne, who would have thought it, who at the start of the game we see him at quite a low point, struggling with the loss of his wife, dealing with it by excessive drinking and taking pills. It's quite a dark yet perfect way to lay out the start of the game, as this is all shown before you start playing in an opening scene, so already you start to understand what Max is actually going through and you feel for him, to already connect with the character very early on, which I did. And for the record, I have yet to play the previous games. Now Max actually works in Sao Paulo, Brazil as a private security contractor for a very rich family, the Brancos, due to them being heavily targeted, and after the event that happens very early on, which I won't say, Max goes on to sort of save their family, following on with tons of action-packed scenes just like an action movie, though there's still a lot more to get from Max rather than him just being this typical hero character as you play through. It does show he still thinks about his past and does include a noir style narrative. You listen to his internal monologue as you progress, which makes you learn a lot more about him as a character, as he gives off his thoughts and feelings whilst narrating in the past tense, which was quite cool. Overall, I really enjoyed it this way, and it would have been lost in terms of the character connection if it wasn't added, as we would only see him be this generic action soldier guy. Then we also see his character development as he starts to change himself as a character, as well as his own look. Definitely made the story a lot more immersive, as well as the cutscenes we see from him, which all have such a unique comic book style with borders, split screens and flashing filters. The flashing could be seen as a bit over the top. When I first started the game I thought something was wrong with it. That's all about the story. As I mentioned, I could have gone a bit more in depth with spoilers, but I don't want to do that, and I think people can agree. But lastly, I'd like to talk about the world of Max Payne 3, which has some great variety in mission design in terms of the settings. So many locations you fight in as you progress, so it's never the same, mixed with the gunplay of course. As I said, these different environments can allow you to experiment with the fighting, with tons of different objects to jump over, ledges to leap off or act as barriers, and occasional moments where the game fully allows you to use a interactive part of the environment. It would have been nice to see this a bit more. There's still a great set of fights where you're on the move and completely switches up the gameplay, like on vehicles, a helicopter for example. There's tons of destructible objects in the environment that can break when shot at, so you can't always stay behind cover if you choose, nor can an enemy. I'd say the game definitely emphasises on action in all areas. One thing that I already expected when going to check out this game is that it doesn't have a lot of free open areas for you to explore, like an open world, which I thought would be the case. I would say it's more like an action adventure game, but maybe a lot less of the adventure and more of the action, as that genre is a lot more linear, which this game definitely is for sure. As I mentioned, I wasn't necessarily expecting an open world in any way, and I quite like that. I thoroughly enjoy both genres. In terms of performance, well, as I've already praised, the graphics and visuals, they all look incredible, especially for a 11-year-old game. At times I really couldn't believe it. I don't think a person who had never heard of the game before would be able to tell, and Rockstar always seemed to be ahead of the curve in this aspect. And I also didn't notice any bugs or freezes in my playthrough at least. Again, it's only a 10-hour game, so there would be a minimal amount anyway. And I believe that's where I wrap up this review of Max Payne 3 in 2023. If you enjoy action and immersive gunplay, then this game definitely hits the spot after all these years. Even for people that aren't really sure, I would recommend it because I can assure you, you won't find another game that has this style of unique gunplay, and it definitely surprised me. It allows for so much fun, even if the overall mission design isn't anything mind-blowing. Some could say they're definitely repetitive at a base level, but then this stylish look of gunplay and experimentation just overshadows it, and of course the story and Max's growth as a character adds on to it as he narrates everything whilst giving out his own feelings that allows you to connect with him quite early on. If you enjoyed this review and found it helpful, then let me know by tapping that like button down below, and if you enjoy story video games, then that's what this channel is all about, so you can subscribe to the channel if you'd like to. There's also a playlist of a series I've done in the description down below. And lastly, if you'd like to support me by becoming a member of the channel and gain access to various perks, then you can do so by clicking the join button, though if you're on mobile then there will be a link in the description. Thank you for your support and watching until the very end. That was Max Payne 3, and bye bye.